was larger-than-life character. He was a very kind, caring man. He was a family man. He was a larger-than-life character. We were a very normal family, but he was just out for a good time, and he loved his family, and he loved his children, and he loved me.
And even though he was only in his 30s, you'd been together a very long time, hadn't you?
Yeah, we had. So yeah, we'd been together since we were 21, and we got married at 24.
Wow. And you mentioned the children, Tom and Emily, and I know that they're both now building happy futures for their own young families, but how old were they at the time that Jem
Emily
died?
was 11 and Tom was 9.
So it's March 2004,
Yeah.
and you're starting to become a bit concerned about Jem. What happened? What were the early signs that something wasn't right?
Okay, Jem wanted a vasectomy operation. I was on the contraceptive pill and he didn't want me to be on that anymore. And he said, you're getting too old for that at 34. And he said, I'm going to have a vasectomy operation. And on the Thursday evening, he said, I feel dreadful, Cal. I think I've got the flu. And I said, okay, just go to bed, and just go to bed and sleep it off. That night, he was just vomiting all night and had diarrhea. So I rang the doctor the next morning to say, look, he's had an operation, he's vomiting, he's got diarrhea, what do I do? I think he's dehydrated. And they said, we'll send the doctor to you. So they sent the doctor from the local GP surgery in the afternoon, gave him some antibiotics. He said he's got an infection, but you couldn't see the infection on Jem. There was no scabs or sores or anything like that, so it must have been internal. He said it's obviously an infection, so he took the tablets, and on that night he just deteriorated, so much so my dad came to the house and he said, Cal, needs to go to hospital. And Jem said, no, I'm not going to hospital. Don't send me to hospital, Cal. I'm fine. If I feel like this tomorrow morning, I'll go to the hospital. And I said, okay, then that's fine. He had lost control of his bowels. By the next morning, he'd lost control of his bowels and his lips were blue. And I thought, this doesn't seem right. He's dehydrated. So I rang his sister first of all, because she had lots of knowledge of illnesses from having leukemia, and she said, Cal, ring an ambulance. They arrived and the nurse came in and she said, how much does Jem drink? How much does he weigh? And lots of questions like that. And she said, and I said, he's going to be all right. And they said, we're doing everything we can, which was a real shock to me. I then went outside and sat on the wall because I didn't know what else to do. And the nurse came and sat by me and she put her arm around me, and I don't know who the nurse was. And she said, are you okay? And it was just a very strange moment, because I thought, I didn't know if I was okay or not. I didn't know what was happening with Jem. Then they called me back in and they said, we've got his heart going again and we're going to put him in a coma in intensive care. And I said, great, that's something. So we went up to intensive care. That was on the Saturday. And we just waited for them to put him on the machine, into the machine. And then you called me into your office and you said, could you go and get Emily and Tom? And I said, why do we need Emily and Tom? Is he that bad? And you said, you need to go and get them. So my brother-in-law brought them to the hospital. They left on the Saturday afternoon, hopeful that he was going to be okay. And to be honest with you, Ron, I was as well. I really didn't know how ill he was. I really did think he was going to be okay. He was going to go on this dialysis machine and that was going to make his life so much better. So that was the Saturday, and he's still in intensive care in an induced coma. On the Tuesday, I went home to get a lamp for the room that we were staying in. And I don't know why, I just wanted to get this lamp. And then when I got home, Mum said the hospital on the phone, they want you to go back. And then we got back to the hospital, and I think Julian,
Julian Hull.
yeah, he said that they were going to switch the machine off because Jem was brain dead. And I said, how brain dead was he? And they said that he probably wouldn't recognise the children. And that's when I knew that I'd lost him.
Yeah.
That's when I knew. So we went into the room and they turned the machine off. So there was no countdown, and I just lay with my head under the blankets on his chest with my family around me. And then they came in and said, he's gone.
We can't put into words how that must have made you feel. No one in your position would have known that this young, healthy man with a possible infection might be at risk of sepsis. In many ways, the UK Sepsis Trust is Jem's legacy. You know, as you said, after Jem died, I sat down in this hospital with a few junior members of my team and we created the Sepsis Six. And Julian, who you mentioned, sort of supported us, and we started to spread the word around it. And you would hope that 21 years later, things would be very different. And I hope and believe that genuinely there are fewer stories like Jem's than there used to be. And we probably just didn't hear about them all those years ago. But how does it make you feel? You've said angry, but 21 years in and we've got Jem's legacy and we've raised awareness and still people are dying. What you must want to shout from the rooftop.
You read in the paper that somebody died from sepsis and they start raising awareness, the family do, because they've never heard of sepsis. And I think 20 years on, you've not heard of it. Why? And you can't comprehend that sometimes. I think they should be not scared of asking the question. Asking the question, could it be sepsis? Because I think that is the main thing to say, to get at, to be not scared, not to be the normal family like me that didn't ask questions, but to be that person that says, could it be sepsis?